My name is Linda. Standing in the rented hall, surrounded by the warm glow of lights and the sound of clinking glasses, I'm overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. The Montgomery family's celebration is in full swing, and the three-tiered cake I've made stands as the centerpiece. The sight of Evelyn's tears of joy and Thomas's voice, steady with pride, makes me realize that this moment is the culmination of a journey filled with despair and hope. A year ago, my bakery on Elm Street, in the heart of Charleston, was on the verge of collapse. I had opened the bakery 2 years prior, driven by a passion for baking and a dream of creating a place where people could experience sweet moments. I grew up in a small family. My parents were hard-working but simple people. My father was a mechanic, always focused on his work, and my mother was a homemaker. They were loving but didn't understand my dream of baking. My grandmother, however, was my inspiration. She was a kind-hearted woman who spent hours in the kitchen, teaching me the art of baking. She always said, "A cake should whisper, not shout." The early days of the bakery were filled with hope. The scent of freshly baked cinnamon rolls wafted through the street, and a few curious passers-by would come in, charmed by the chalkboard signs and my nervous smile. I told myself, this is it. This is where I belong. But as time went on, the reality of running a business hit me hard. The shelves in my bakery were mostly empty. Beyond the glass cases, there were only a few lonely leftovers. The landlord's letters became more and more impatient, and the bank's emails were like heavy weights on my chest. Suppliers, who had been kind at first, were starting to lose patience. I touched the crack in the corner of the front display glass, a small accident from the first week I opened, but in my mind, it had become a symbol of my failing confidence. One evening, as I was wiping down the shelves with a vinegar-based cleaner that smelled harsh, I was ready to give up. The weekend ahead was my silent deadline. If nothing changed, I would call the landlord on Monday and surrender the keys. I closed my eyes and remembered the early days, but all I could feel was exhaustion. Just then, the bell over the door chimed. I was startled, as customers at this hour were rare. An elderly man, Mr. Henry Thompson, stood in the doorway. He was wearing an old-fashioned tweed overcoat and looked as if he had come from another era. His face was lined with worry, and his blue eyes held a desperate look. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gravelly but urgent. "Are you still open?" Technically, I wasn't. I'd been closed for hours, but there was something about the way he clung to the doorframe that made me unable to turn him away. "I'm sorry," I said gently. "We're just about closed." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and held it like a talisman. "My name's Henry Thompson," he said in a rush. "Tomorrow is my wife's 82nd birthday. We've been married 57 years, and I forgot to order her cake." I could feel the weight of his guilt. He stood there, not as a customer, but as a husband filled with remorse. He went on to tell me that his wife, Mrs. Amelia Thompson, had been in and out of the hospital all year due to heart problems. He'd been so focused on taking care of her that he'd lost track of this important thing. She loved her birthday cake, a simple red velvet with cream cheese frosting and a single sugar rose on top. I was torn. I thought of my pantry shelves. I'd rationed all my ingredients, saving what little remained. My last block of cream cheese was in the refrigerator, and my last 2 vanilla beans had been tucked away for something special. I'd promised myself to close the bakery by Monday, so why take on more work? Mr. Thompson must have seen the conflict in my silence. He fumbled for his wallet and said, "Please, I'll pay whatever you ask. Just name the price." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said softly. "If I make this cake, you'll pay me tomorrow. When you see it, if it's what you hoped for." His eyes widened, and disbelief turned into relief. He promised to be there at 9:55 the next morning. After he left, the silence in the bakery felt different. It was no longer empty but expectant. I pulled the string of my apron tighter and walked into the kitchen. I brought down my grandmother's worn notebook from the top shelf. The pages smelled faintly of flour and sugar, and her handwriting was a comforting sight. I found the red velvet recipe, and the words felt like a promise. I turned on the oven and laid out my remaining ingredients. As I sifted the flour and added the cocoa, the scent of cocoa filled the air. It was like a warm embrace, reminding me of my childhood in my grandmother's kitchen. I split open a vanilla bean, and the sweet, sharp scent filled the room, a scent of possibility. The hours passed as I worked. I remembered climbing onto a stool in my grandmother's kitchen, watching her whisk cream in a chipped porcelain bowl. She'd tap her wooden spoon against the rim and say, "A cake should whisper, not shout. If it whispers, people will lean in to listen." By dawn, the cake was ready. It was a red velvet cake layered with cream cheese frosting, crowned with a delicate sugar rose. I slid it into a white box, the kind I'd saved for weddings that never came. Tying the ribbon felt like sealing a precious secret. At 9:45, Mr. Thompson arrived. When he saw the cake, his eyes filled with tears. "This is her cake. It's the one she always loved. You don't know what you've done for me," he said. In that moment, all my debts and worries faded into the background. Later that day, at the Thompson family's celebration, the cake was a hit. Amelia's eyes sparkled with joy, and the whole room was filled with applause. Their granddaughter, Lily Thompson, a 34-year-old well-known food critic in Charleston, was also there. She took a bite of the cake and said, "This isn't just a cake. This is art." That night, Lily wrote an article about the cake in my bakery. She titled it "One Forgetful Grandfather and the Most Honest Cake in Charleston." The article spread like wildfire. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications. People were asking for wedding cakes, anniversary cakes, and corporate orders. I was in shock. Just yesterday, I was ready to close the bakery, thinking the city had forgotten me. Now, it seemed like the city had found me all at once. I felt a glimmer of hope that I hadn't felt in months. A few days later, Lily came to the bakery. She said, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize my article would cause such a storm." I was still dazed. "A storm?" "Yes. I've never seen anything like it. Yesterday, I thought I'd be closing this place for good. Today, I can't keep up," I said. Lily looked around the bakery and saw more than just a small, tired shop. She said, "You're talented. That cake wasn't about technique. It was about heart. People tasted it, and that's why the story spread." She then suggested a partnership. "I'll invest in this bakery. I'll handle the logistics, marketing, orders, scheduling, supplies, and staff. All I ask is that you keep baking with the same honesty that made that cake what it was." I was stunned. "Why would you do this for me?" "You don't even know me," I asked. She smiled and said, "Because I've been searching for something real. Your cake reminded me why I fell in love with food in the first place. I don't want that to disappear. Charleston doesn't want that to disappear." I thought about my grandmother's notebook, the crack in the display glass, and the long, lonely nights. For the first time, the path ahead didn't look like a dead end. I took a deep breath and said, "Yes, I'll do it." A year has passed since then. The bakery, now named Sweet Delights, has changed a lot. The name glows in polished lettering above the doorway, and the glass is spotless. Every morning, there's a line outside the door. Locals, tourists, families, and couples wait patiently, some carrying copies of Lily's article. Inside, the air is filled with energy. I no longer work alone. Young apprentices in crisp aprons move around, carrying trays, frosting cakes, and kneading dough under my watchful eye. The bakery has expanded, with new ovens and larger refrigerators. Lily has kept her promise. She's turned my fragile dream into something sustainable. But the essence of the bakery remains the same. The recipes are still mine, and the standards are high. I move among the apprentices, reminding them, slow down. Don't skimp on the soul. Every cake might be someone's most important memory. This spring, the Thompson family placed another order. Amelia was turning 83, and they wanted me to create the centerpiece again. On the day of the celebration, as I carried the cake into the hall, the room fell silent. The cake was as beautiful as the first one, with a sugar rose blooming on top. Thomas cleared his throat and said, "Last year, this young woman didn't just save my wife's birthday, she saved our family." The room erupted in thunderous applause. Amelia reached for my hand and said, "Your hands do miracles. Guard this gift. Don't ever let anyone take it from you." As I walked back to the bakery that night, I thought about the journey. The landlord's letters, the bank notices, and the silent nights in the empty shop were all part of my past. I realized that dreams don't die. They wait for the right moment, for faith and courage, to be reborn. And as I stood in the bakery, listening to the hum of the ovens and the chatter of the customers, I knew that this was only the beginning.